Hi there. Being a Sunday, I think I'll jump into a topic of Christianity, of course. Um, and basically just talk about biblical perspective of a lot of people out there who seem to have a confusing biblical perspective to my point of view. Of course, I've changed my perspective on some things because you investigate, especially the more complex issues like revelations and this, that, and the other, and possibilities of outcomes in the future and etc. But I think there's some biblical perspectives that are totally don't make any sense to me. It's a bit hard to kind of explain it, but when you get people that are criticizing the Jews on this point, where they are celebrating the Passover, where all Egyptians were slaughtered by the angel of death, and being critical of this as their primary celebration. Well, you know, if we are the Israelites, if there is such a group as the Israelites, which obviously there is biblically, and God had protected them with miraculous things like that and guided them through the desert and parted the water, why why is this such a bad thing? I mean, you should be we should be celebrating this. In terms of this was our victory. It was for Christians. Um, you know, it's like not ever quoting the biblical term, the synagogue of Satan, in Christ's own words, because people are afraid, or feel it's too harsh. Now, how dare you say that God's own words would be, too much, or must be like, presented in some other way, or hidden, the meaning's hidden, the truth of it hidden. Same with unpopular things like homosexuality, the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, obviously, the kind of, you know, you get these slogans now that, from the hardcore side, gay pride gets you fried, and things like this. Um, so also biblically, there's, on the weak, wishy-washy side of Christians, which are not Christians at all, they just don't know it, where they have weak views on creation, and perhaps it took 6 billion years, etc. When the Bible says it took 6 days, and that didn't have any kind of other interpretation. A year is as a day to the Lord, but that is just because God is timeless. It's just trying to show you. But the Lord said it was created in 6 days. A day is a day, and it never changed. And if there is a God, if they believe in a God, so I mean, there is a God. I believe in the God, in Jesus. They seem to not understand. Well, he's God. He's all powerful. He creates things in an instant with the minimum of effort. What's this business of, he did it slowly with evolution, and which quite honestly is confused with adaptation. In animal species, adaptation can be quite broad over time, but you do not evolve. A dog does not evolve into a dinosaur, or vice versa. Or a mouse does not evolve into a lemur, which becomes a man, a monkey, then a man. Then the proof of this creation is in Isaiah, the statements made in Isaiah, in the book of Job, where, it says, the Lord hangs the earth on nothing. That's Job 26:7. And that, how old is the book of Job? really. I think it's one of the oldest that they found. It is truly, it's older than 2,000 years, certainly way older than 2,000 years. And it shows an understanding that was way above the average person who was a sailor who would be terrified that the Kraken would come up at the end of the earth or whatever it was. And they would be, terrified to sail, as even Columbus had sailors that were genuinely terrified and didn't understand that the earth was totally a globe. They even thought that they had found India on their passage to America when they hit land in America. So they had no idea of the size even of the globe. That it was an entire Pacific Ocean away from India, which was the spice route and what they were wanting to establish. And another one is my people will hear my voice. And when all through the Old Testament, the my people was the Israelites, and that is a physical specific tribes, mind you, because there were 10 tribes of Israel that went from the northern kingdom and became the Caucasian European groups, which there's 10 of them, so there's diversity. So obviously you understand the Scandinavian is not the same as a Gaul or a Celt. Yeah, a lot of these Celtics are trying to go back to this cult, type of, with wizards and Merlins and things like that, thinking that they're claiming their heritage. Meanwhile, the heritage is actually claiming Christianity back. Because the 10 tribes of Israel were believers and they would have gone forward into the rest of the world. And obviously, these people became pagan and lost their faith at some point. But history was obviously a little bit cyclical in this in this respect. But nevertheless, they rejected God and they obviously became pagan. It's quite clear in some of the Celtic writing and things like this. But basically, the general thing is that my people will hear my voice. And again, I keep going on about this, that the European nations established themselves as Christian nations a long time ago already. When the crosses on the flags, they were the first to really double down on Christianity as their religion of the people of that land. So no matter what level of Christianity you are, unless you're fake, it's basically coming down to you don't want to accept these terms and conditions of the Bible. They're not negotiable. They just are, And if you're not prepared to accept those, then you're obviously not a Christian, and you're a fake, and you're wasting space in the church. And many of these churches are packed. But yeah, there's many good Christian pastors out there. Dr. Peter Hammond's one. John MacArthur's very good at debunking the prosperity gospel, the health, wealth, and prosperity gospel, and also good at not kind of putting a guilt trip too much on people, except the LGBT and things like that, where the guilt trip should be going towards. He may be a little bit not quite right on the 10 tribes of Israel and the Caucasians and identity. I think a lot of these guys were trained very, well, but they just omitted certain things back in the old days that they could get away with. And it seemed that, since the people of Christendom have fallen asleep, the Israelites, that they could slip these things past the boomer generation and past the previous generation perhaps too. But if you're a believer, it's clear that there were an Israelite tribe. And there were 10 tribes. And it's also clear that although this was God's chosen people as such, which seems to be kind of a swear word, unless you're Israeli, then they're allowed to claim it, and they're allowed to have a wall with rockets and James Bond lasers on top. Whereas, ethnic Europeans must, just jump in a lake of fire. So, if you believe in the Bible, it's clear that that was a physical reality. Here's a tribe, and they're still here. Unless if they were wiped out, then what's the point? What is the Lord been doing? It's just if He's just allowed them to just disappear. And this is why I think it's this miscegenation is pushed so much by the enemy. And I believe it's fully satanic. That it is full blown, and it's very powerful. So Satan has got a strong foothold in this area because I'm not even allowed to talk about this stuff. Without guys like Josh Peters or making a scene about racism, which he did recently on a YouTube video, about Katie Hopkins. But I'll discuss that later. Anyway, but however, in Christianity, just to clarify, it does also say that all tribes and nations will worship God. I think it's the day of Pentecost when the tongues of fire came down and so on. But somehow it seems to me that came to mean that mixed race stuff must just go for its badge now. And there's an 11th commandment now added to the 10th commandment, 10 commandments. And the 11th commandment is thou shalt not be racist. And recently they put that at number 1. So is that the case? Do you honestly believe that a racist is going to hell, but murderer, rapist, God hater, they're all okay? Covetous. A lot of this is coveting, by the way. This taking of women of other tribes that are not yours, are not of your tribe. It's coveting. It's breaking the commandment anyway. But no, what we have is the 11th commandment now. Thou shalt not be racism, which has become the first commandment. Begun by Trotsky. You can check 1950 Oxford Dictionary. I did look. Race is in the book. No such word as racism or racist. It was just a ism that he added. Razista, I think, was what he used in Russia too. Because the Russians started to notice an inconvenient truth that though there's this egalitaire and all this revolutionary, which has started in the French Revolution, that ideology, although this stuff is spouted by the new Communist Party, aside from them noticing there's actually a hell of a lot of bloodshed, and they haven't just stopped at the Tsar family. It's carrying on, but there seems to be a group that's controlling. There's 80% of the new Russian government that came out. It was a specific Bolshevik tribe. So, and essentially other parts of Russia where they were not Russian, Mongols, wherever they could find the most un-Russian people possible. And then, of course, this specific Bolshevik tribe that was comprised of 80% of this new party. So for noticing this, he coined that term, Trotsky, who is of this specific tribe, funny enough. And nobody's allowed to notice these things because it gets you into trouble. You've got your family, your own friends close by who act like this. They don't need a Stasi police because often you have Stasi police, you know, in your school, in your family, whoever went to dinner at Christmas and was forbidden from talking about certain things. And you are the enemy now. Like exactly what they said about what the Nazis did is is actually what they're very good at accusing others of what they do. It's what the Bolsheviks do is that they break the family apart by one person can ridicule, or in those days they would inform on others, and because this thing surpassed everything. So it's just like the crime of being racist. It surpasses everything. If you're a racist, it gives them a right to murder, bludgeon, blowtorch, um, genocide you through, you know, racial integration. If just a mass invasion, like you don't even get a chance to put up a fight, which is worse than full scale war, um, as unpleasant as that is. At least you've got a chance, you see. The other way, you've got no chance. It's just a timeline. It's just a little bit longer on the timeline. So, Christianity needs to clean house. All those people at the dinner table who are celebrating Christmas, but yet don't want you to speak any kind of truth, and or investigate other things which they could be wrong about, and then see. But we we have been divided and conquered. Um, we know that this thing can get much uglier because it happened in USSR. So we know that the Christians do betray their own and will, just to keep their status in the society and keep their proletariat job or keep their job in the factory or whatever, they will sacrifice their children, their fathers, their mothers, their brothers, their sisters. They will do this, and they have been doing this. It's on a very subtle scale, but so far there's been so much capitulation that they actually almost don't need the Stasi police, because people are just shaming people out of daring to voice an opinion. Don't come here with that political crap. And then they'll start wandering into a political conversation. You'll interject at some point or make a question. Don't come with your political crap. But they've just been talking about politics. It's you'll see very soon. It's almost impossible to sit with a group of people for 2 or 3 hours and not come across politics, humor, even religion. It ends up that you just don't talk about it very much at all, which is great for some people because they're quite happy to be very uninteresting, and very boring. Maybe they're not bored, but they don't have exciting ideas or anything like that. But also, they're happy to maintain the status quo, which is very important because this has come from the way the whole power structure is structured, power dynamics. It's just as the billionaire class are only allowed to be billionaires by the trillionaire class, and the billionaire class only allow millionaires by the billionaire class. So there's this hierarchy, which has got the same damn people at the top, they're not you, they're not your family, but they're controlling you on a much more deeper level than what your own family is, because they control monetary supply. This is a fact. Anyway, just wanted to touch on Katie Hopkins, who's recently either very stupid or fallen into a, or she's part of this, you know, deception group. But she went and she accepted an award, which was a setup by Josh Peters, a South African, who should be thanking Katie Hopkins for speaking out about the crime and the violence. But of course, he's not under any threat. I'm not sure he lives in South Africa, but even if he did, he's probably in like such a safe gated community, or there's not too many problems in that area, like in the northern part of the country, or the Eastern Transvaal, where these massive numbers of farmers are being butchered, raped, and brutalized in the most unbelievable way. I mean, if you actually focus in on what is being done and what Katie Hopkins is exposed, because these things are facts and not just sort of sucked out of someone's thumb. And this guy is a rich, spoiled guy. It seems like he's one of these, overly affluent, leftist kind of kids. He'd be perfect on the campus of UCT. The Students' Representative Council or something like that. I don't know if he ever did. But, this is what you're dealing with. The enemy within. I mean, if he is even from us, as so to speak. Because there is also that covert, undercover Bolshevik type, crypto Bolshevik type, which we have to deal with as well, which complicates things a hell of a lot. So I'll attach that video. Just would like people to, again, just put comments on my YouTube videos. Like it, thumb up, whatever. But just, put the comments down, whatever they are, negative or positive. It doesn't matter. You could be wrong about this, you could be wrong about that. But also, especially about that thing I discussed about why is it a bad thing to celebrate the Passover? I mean, of course, we also have the birth of Christ and Easter, which are a new covenant. But it was still a blessing from God that God defeated our enemies in such a way. And I just also put it to you that shouldn't we be kind of praying for something like this, where our enemies can actually start reaping in what they've been sowing for so long, by the power of a miracle. Because it seems to me that we are incapable of doing anything about these things that are happening. But it goes back to this Katie Hopkins video, where suddenly the radical Bolshevik types and their friends like Josh Peters has the resources and the ability to impose a consequence on somebody. I mean, they pulled her out, made her fly to another country. They poured resources. This came with valuable money. This comes with resources that they had. And it just shows that, that they can pull together this kind of money when they need to. There's no expense that they don't have resources for. No childish act, no comedian or whatever. There's nothing too out of reach for them because they've got great resources. So they're able to impose consequences on us and embarrass us, and it's still disproportionate in a massive way. We've imposed consequences on them a little bit by mainly the mainstream media, where we humiliate them, but they've still got their couple of billion diehard university educated, left wing, possibly Stockholm syndrome, South Africans, Australians, Americans, British, European, uh, ethnic white people who just cannot see anything wrong with what they've done. Where they're so obvious they're lying and they're bullshitting. That either you're morally bankrupt and you kind of like the fact that people are suffering because it's not your kind of people. It might actually be your people per se as a racial identity, which is a thing, whether you like it or not. And yeah, so it's hard to kind of figure out, how these people can ignore these factors and just brush it off, but then are able to not notice how consequences are imposed on others. I mean, Katie Hopkins was banned from South Africa, as far as I know. So was Lauren Southern. I think Katie Hopkins was detained. Aside from that, this guy goes, I think he's probably friends with that, the editor of the Citizen Sun, Daniel Friedman. It seems to me a very Friedman-esque type of influence in this video, which just have a look at it and then just think for yourself. Do you have the money to set up something like this and fly over and pull in a whole lot of people? Do you have the resources for that? Who funds that? And how do these jumped up kids have these kind of resources? There is a YouTube blogger, really? A YouTube blogger, and that enables you to get those kind of resources. I'd never even heard of the guy. Anyway, and even if it does turn out it's his own resources, we know that the enemy has got vast financial resources, which in turn come off our backs in the taxes of that they put on the country, where your salary is taxed. Fine, okay, everybody does that. But then you pay a tax on everything you buy in the shop. Okay, well, they have to tolerate that, yeah. And then they want to tax inheritance. Oh gosh, yeah, okay, of course. And then they want to put extra taxes on meat and sugar because the lefties have decided they don't like this stuff anymore. So now you're paying a physical tax. You've got somebody who's got the power to impose consequences. I don't care what mechanism you use. They're using the mechanisms they've got, but you have to have a reciprocal ability to impose consequences. You have to. Whether you find the most basic, cheapest way to do it or highly complex, expensive, whatever it is, this has to take place now. There can't just be this endless, we complain, they assault us, read us out of our own lands with foreign invasive armies. They do whatever they like. They can just have a verbal slinging match as well afterwards, quite comfortably. But excuse me, we are not even allowed to impose the most basic of consequences. This is a huge problem. So if we ever wish to break out of this, we have to look at that kind of thing. So I don't think that we need to be ever apologetic. I think Trump proved that when he doubled down on, quite honestly, some of the things he did say were a little bit cringeworthy, but he did the right thing. It's a rough and tough game, and you realize like you can't apologize, because that doesn't help. I mean, how long have the whites in South Africa been apologizing for about apartheid? It hasn't helped. The left is still on their high horse. Yet, no, still no way of imposing any consequences. There's ways. There's so many ways. Um, but this is what has to happen now. It's either that or just forget it. You know, because trying to rally up support, and we've established that the vast numbers of university students and the boomers who still have their money, they will not change morally. They refuse. And unfortunately, we now know that we're not going to be able to just use the winning the hearts and minds tactics or things like that. Although that is also an important component. But we have to start working other angles. Anyway, have a good rest of the Sunday evening or whatever. Whenever you watch this, have a good day if it's tomorrow. But catch you again.